that there's no warrant for that from the psychological community. So anyways, I got up at 2 in the morning and made these videos. I thought, well, let's see what happens if I make these videos. It's like, well, this is back to the technology issue. It's like, I didn't know what YouTube was when I put my videos on it.
You didn't know what YouTube was?
Well, you know what? No one knows what YouTube is. That's the thing. Well, look at what happened to you. You have 1 billion and a half downloads a year. It's like you're definitely riding a giant wave. Like, would have you predicted this 15 years ago?
No.
So you know, you're in the right place in the right time, and you're a very interesting interviewer because, well, especially for long form, because you're very, very curious, but also very, very tough. Like, it's interesting watching you because if you don't understand something, you will go after the person. And you're not doing it in a vindictive way, but you're quite a formidable interviewer. And I've been trying to figure out why you're so successful. And like, you're a lot smarter than anyone might think, which is quite interesting. So you're a weird combination because, you know, your persona doesn't shout intellectual, but you're damn smart and you're tough as a bloody boot and you ask really provocative questions, and not because you're provocative. And so your personality and this long form seem to suit each other really well. You're also really good at pursuing things you don't understand instead of assuming that you know what you're talking about. So you take the listeners on a journey, right? It's an exploratory journey. But fundamentally, what's propelled you to superstardom in some sense is not just your ability, which is non-trivial, but the fact that you're on this giant technological wave and you're one of the first adopters. And I'm in the same situation. We're first adopters of a technology that's as revolutionary as the Gutenberg printing press. And so that's all unfolding in real time. It's like, look at what's happening. Yeah, well, the spoken word is now as powerful as the written word. That's never happened before in human history. And we're on the cutting edge of that, for better or worse.
That's a very good way to put it. The spoken word is just powerful. Yeah, and maybe even more so because it's so accessible to people that don't have the time to read.
Well, or
stuck in traffic, you know.
And here's another possibility. Maybe 10 times as many people can listen to complex information as can read complex information.
In terms of their ability to
process it. Yeah. Sure, could easily. We don't know. Maybe it's the same number.
It's certainly easier to listen to a book on tape for me than it is to read a book.
Yeah. Well, so the question is, for how many people is that true? And I would say it might be true for the majority of people. And then people are doing hybrids, you know. So because you can sync your book with Audible. Right? So they'll read when they have the time, but then when they have found time, which is also a major component of this, that's the time when you're driving or the time when you're doing dishes, is now all of a sudden you can educate yourself during that found time. This is a big revolution. And blowing out the bandwidth makes a huge difference because, well, we talked about that at the beginning. Looks like people are more intelligent than we thought. And you and I are both, and the rest of this intellectual dark web, that's kind of what unites us, is everybody has an independent platform, virtually everybody. They have an idiosyncratic viewpoint. They're interested in having discussions and pursuing the furtherance of their knowledge, even though they might have a priori ideological commitments. Sam does, and I suppose I do, and Ben Shapiro certainly does. But they're still interested in having the discussion. But more importantly, they're capitalizing on the long form. And the fact that that's possible is a reflection of this technological transformation, and the technological transformation might be utterly profound. It looks like it. And so that's, you know, I've been trying to sort this out because I keep thinking, well, why the hell are these people coming to listen to what I'm saying? It's like, well, I'm a guru, you know, I'm a sage. It's something like that. It's like, don't be thinking that first. Think if there's situational determinants first. Take your damn personality out of it. Okay, what's going on? Oh, yes, this is all fostered by YouTube and fostered by podcasts. What's so new about that? No bandwidth restrictions, no barrier to entrance. Possibility of dialogue because people cut up the YouTube videos into chunks and make their own comments on it. It's a whole new communication technology.
Also a lack of interference by executives and producers and all these different people that have their own bias.
That's right. It's unmediated.
Yes,
right?
Unmediated is giant.
Yeah. Well, and that's all part of the reason you're so popular too, is like you just put this on. Like, so you've got exactly the right balance of competent production, because there's nothing excess about it. Like, it's competent, but no more than that. I know that's by design, but you also don't edit it. It's like what you see is what you get. It's like everyone's relieved by that. We can make our own damn decisions.
Well, I think that's very important. If you're going to have a conversation with someone that's honest, you can't decide what to leave in and what to take out. Mm-hmm. It's just
well, that's partly also why I deal with the press the way I do. It's
yes.
like if I'm going to have a full conversation, it's like I'm willing to take the hits.
Yeah.
And
I understand what you're saying, but that's one of the reasons why it frustrates me so much is that I see what they're doing. And I'm like, what you're doing is ancient. What you're doing is this is what people did 20 years ago, 30 years ago. You can't really do that anymore. You can't misrepresent people. You used to be able to, if you were in the press, you could take people, quote them out of context, do whatever the fuck you wanted, put an article about them, and they couldn't do a goddamn thing about it. It happened to me in it was like 99. I did I had a comedy CD that came out, and this woman wrote an article about it, and she just lied. She lied about my perspective. She lied about the bits. She misquoted the bits. She didn't just paraphrase them. She changed what the bits were to make them, misogynist or hateful or whatever it was. And in doing so, there was no recourse. There was nothing that I could do about that. I'm like, wow, I'd never experienced that before. I was like, this is stunning. And then I found out this person did that a lot, and this is what she did. And there's ultimate power that comes with being the person that has the pen, being the person that has the typewriter, and you're the person who works for the Boston Globe or whatever the publication is. That is something that existed forever. And that you had to be either a friend of the press, you had to play ball, you had to bend to their will, you had to do what they wanted you to do, and they could misrepresent you and choose to paint you in any way they like. And it's one of the reasons why I don't do anything anymore. I don't do any interviews anymore. I don't do anything. I don't want to do anything. I do enough, man. You want to know about me? Fucking, there's 1,000 podcasts. There's more than 1,000. I think there's 1,100, and there's a bunch of other ones too.
Right.
It's just it doesn't make any sense.
That it may also be the position that I increasingly find myself in.
I think it's the right position because then the misrepresentations don't exist anymore. So then the only problem is the dispute over the actual ideological conversations or the actual concepts.
But the thing is, you made a point there that's quite interesting. Is like we are in a new media landscape. So now if someone comes out as a media figure with some institutional credibility and misrepresents, it's exposed. And so then the question is, how much risk should you shoulder to expose the proclivity for media misrepresentation? And the answer to that might be some. Now, it might be moving, maybe I've done enough of that. I mean, it would be easier for me in many ways if I just stopped doing it. But there's some utility in having it play out. And so I'm trying to only take those opportunities that appear to have more benefit than risk. And when I'm defining benefit, the question is then what constitutes benefit? And I guess what constitutes benefit is, that would further the attempts that I'm making to bring information to a vast number of people that could conceivably help them stabilize and improve their individual lives. That's worth a certain amount of risk.
Well, it certainly increases your profile. And even if, you have 60% of these people are going to get a bad perception of you, 40% of these people that never heard of you now are going to understand who you are because they do further investigation. So there's some benefit in that, but the negative, I get text messages from random people that I was friends with years ago that say this Jordan Peterson is just such a lying sack of shit and he's this and that. I'm like, I don't even know who the fuck you are. And then second of all, why are you contacting me? You're not even saying hi. You're saying Jordan Peterson is a this.
Yeah. Well, there's an emergency at hand.
He's a scam artist. He's a fraud. And I'm like, wow. And so they'll see an interview, like the Jim Jeffries clip, which is a minute long or whatever it is, or the Vice piece or the initial Kathy Newman piece. And they just form this determined position on you and then read hit pieces on you, and then this is where they take their opinion out. This is where it's from. I feel like these are the last gasps of a dying medium. I really do. I
think too.
I don't think that people appreciate it. I think the people that are listening to this that do appreciate long form conversations and with all warts and all the ugliness and the mistakes and the critical errors and the people that appreciate that, they have a real hate for being lied to, because it changed when you're
also
trying to
for being treated as if they're stupid.
Yeah,
which they aren't.
Yeah, that's both things. It's deceptive. When you edit someone and take their words out of context and change them around, you're being deceptive.
And the New York Times did that again this week. They had some philosophy professor from Hong Kong University write a piece on me, and they quoted me, It was a sentence. There's like the first phrase was in quotes, and then there was some joining words, and then the second phrase was in quotes, and there was some joining words, and then the third phrase was in quotes, and the three quotes added up to a statement that bore no resemblance whatsoever to what I was saying.
How can they do that in the New York Times?
Well,
that seems to me to be something that should be the
I don't think they
antithesis
can.
of what they stand for.
I don't think they can, Joe. I think they're killing their brand so fast that they can't.
But it's so disturbing to me as a person who's been a fan of the New York Times forever.
I know.
I just don't understand how they could allow that to happen. How could you allow your what is the gold standard for journalism? How could you allow it to become something that willfully misrepresents someone?
Well, they never did
push an ideology.
They never did put my book on the New York Times bestseller list. It's quite comical.
How's that possible?
Oh, they have rules, which they don't disclose, but one of them apparently is, well, if the book is published in Canada and distributed in the United States, then it doesn't count, even though they've had books like that on the New York Times bestseller list before. And I think, okay, well, is this bad or good? It's like, well, it's bad because to the degree that I might want to be on the New York Times bestseller list, although I haven't been losing any sleep over it.
But you're selling, I know how many books you're selling.
Yeah, it's basically been the best-selling book in the world since January. You know, it's gone up and down to some degree, but fundamentally,
but it should be the #1 New York Times best-selling book.
So they have their reasons, but I look at that and I think, oh well, you can only do that 10 times until you're done, because it's a fatal error. You have the gold standard for measurement. You're not measuring properly. You're burning up your brand. You think, well, we're the New York Times, so we can burn up our brand. It's like, no, you can't. Newsweek is gone. Time magazine is a shell of its former self. Like the big things disappear, and they disappear when they get crooked and ideologically rigid. And so that's what's happening at the New York Times. Not with everyone there, but with plenty of them. And it'll die faster than people think.
But it's so confusing to me that it didn't used to be that.
Yeah.
And now it is. And are they just responding to this new world where you have to have clickbait journalism and, where people are struggling to find people to actually buy physical newspapers, which is it's a different thing.
It's hard to say, because it's weird because you don't have to resort to clickbait because these long-form discussions are the antithesis of clickbait, right?
Right, but are they struggling in terms of how many people buy their newspaper?
Oh, absolutely. Every newspaper. The newspapers in Canada went cap in hand to the federal government for subsidies about 6 months ago because they're dying so fast. And so some of it is they're being supplanted by technology. That's a huge part of it. But as they are supplanted, they get more desperate. They publish more polarizing stories. That works in the short term to garner more views, but it alienates people from the brand and speeds their demise. Classic death spiral of a big organization. And that's going to clean things out like mad. I mean, I don't know where CNN is in the cable news rankings now, or cable show rankings, but it keeps falling. But it's falling in the rankings as cable itself disintegrates and dies. Why do you need cable TV?
Right.
No one needs cable TV. The only people who have cable TV are the people who haven't figured out yet that you can replace it entirely online for 1/10 the price with much less hassle.
But the irony is people want a location they can go to find out what's going on in the world. And this is the one thing that they used to represent. And, I don't think Fox News is any better. I think you just have these ideological extremes left and right. And I remember very clearly watching the election coverage before the election, leading up to the election. I would go Fox News and then I'd go CNN. I just would go back and forth with them on my cable. Yep. And I would just be laughing. I'd be like, what is really happening in the world? Because I'm getting two different stories. I'm getting Russia and I'm getting Hillary's emails. This is, I don't know what the fuck is what. What is happening? I'm getting pussy grabbing and I'm getting, Benghazi. Yep. This is what I'm getting. And I don't understand why. This is obviously ideological. This is not just.
Look, it might be that as the technology is supplanted, the ideological polarization increases as the thing dies.
Right. They're struggling for anyone to pay attention, and this is the way they have to do it to ensure.
So. And I think what's happening on the other side, which is the side you occupy, say, is that a new technology that's long form that deals with many of those problems is emerging. And it's going to emerge. It's going to be victorious.
But in the meantime,
might already be victorious. In the meantime,
the clickbaity stuff still exists in the digital world.
Yeah.
you know, and then you're getting a lot of the articles that are written about you. People are absorbing these articles not from a physical form, they're getting it from digital.
Yeah, well, okay, so then the sense is, well, do you have fundamental trust in the judgment of your fellow man, let's say? And my answer to that is yes, because although I've been pilloried to a great degree by the radical types in the commentariat and in the classic journalists, the comments with regards to me on YouTube are 50-1 in my favor. And that's even the case when the ideologues put up videos about me that are designed to discredit me. And I've sold 1.5 million books. It's going to be published in 40 countries, and thousands of people are coming to my lectures. And so I would say the attempts to discredit me aren't working.